All right, we are live. Has had an issue there for a little second, but we are live. Moneyline MMA coming at you with another successful week. You already know it, guys. We came out on top from UFC 299. Jose gives himself a little pat on the back as he continues his streak of winning his five weights. Oh my goodness. And of course, by proxy, I win my five weight because we make our picks before the show independently of each other and then just briefly consult to make sure that we know what order we're going in. But that's it. So when we have matching picks like that, it literally is just happenstance. We're not changing things based on our opinions. And Mateusz Gamrot looks a little nervous, man. Woo-hoo. RDA still has it, dude. Wow, he brought it to Mateusz in that first round. But hey, the wrestling prowess. Gamrot is going to be a tough. I don't know, man. Maybe not better than Islam now, but even he said give me two more fights. I'm coming for Islam. Dude, Gamrot's a guy to watch out for. Gamrot and Sarukian, watch out for those dudes. They're gonna be there soon for the lightweight division. Going into my four weight was my only loss of the afternoon, and we also accounted for Jose's only loss of the afternoon. We both posted 4-1 nights from Saturday night, and both of our one is Jailton Almeida, looking good in the first round, pushed a good wrestling pace, and we predicted it, man. At least I know I did because I introduced the fight because he's my four weight man. I'll tell you right now. He did exactly pretty much what I expected. He was a better wrestler than Curtis Blades. He was a smaller man and got a UFC record of takedowns in a round. A UFC record of takedowns in a round with a Curtis Blades fight, and the takedowns were against Curtis Blades. Nobody would have thought, but here I am. I told you guys last week, and Jose agreed. Jose did not disagree, but I said it. And Almeida is the better wrestler in that fight, and he proved it to be the fact. He just couldn't finish Blades, and he became a little desperate. It seemed maybe he gassed out, didn't have the gas tank for 3 rounds at that kind of pace. Go into the second round, and his coaches told him, set up a shot. He didn't set nothing up. He telegraphed it, and it was can't do that against a veteran seasoned pro like Curtis Blades. And I think the announcer was funny. The announcer's like, I didn't even think, I forget which announcer said it. I don't think it was Joe, but he's like, I didn't even think Almeida knew that he got hit when Blades started with the hammer fist. And I actually think he's right, because if you watch the replay, it's like Almeida doesn't even move, dude. He's getting smack, smack, smack. And he's just like, I guess trying to pull his head up to get up. But like, as Curtis Blades said in his post-fight interview, he's like, I kept my belly on the back of his head to make sure he couldn't look up. And like, I don't know if that's just Almeida's inexperience, but it's like, damn, he literally sat there and took the hammer fist until he was out. Other than that, Jose and I clean slated it, and we didn't even pick all the same fights either. Jose had Jan, I didn't have a pick on it. I had Jack Della Almeida, and I called the underdog MVP. How about that? Kevin Holland looked good, but hey, just saying, give me that 2-weight on Michael Venom Page, and to be honest, I should have switched Sean O'Malley with Jailton Almeida, because Sean O'Malley just cruised through Marlon Vera. I really thought Vera was going to do more with the kicking game, and I thought that was one thing that you can do right now to Sean O'Malley to weaken him, but it just didn't work. It didn't pop. Vera got a couple of shots, but nothing of real note. And an easy title defense, I would say, for Sean O'Malley, who boldly calls out the super fight. Jose, I know we've had this conversation before. Fighters should have to have at least, like 2 or 3. Like, you shouldn't just get a belt and be able to go fight a division, right? Like, what do you think?
I would say, yeah, like you once you win it, yeah, you got to beat. There's probably, I feel like every time someone wins it, there's usually, like, I think always a 50-50 chance they'll get a rematch against this whoever they beat. And then after that, I would say 2 more. So I would say defend it 3 times. One at least guaranteed against who you beat to really confirm you are now the next person. But it depends too if it's a close fight or not. If it's unanimous, like, oh, then I get it, no rematch. But I would say 3 at the most, because then you at least definitely clear out a couple of contenders as well. And then so that's like we expect you not to clear out the entire division before you move up, but at least like, hey, you already got a good chunk of the top 5 guys, and now you can just move up. And in the meantime, while the rest of the division sorts itself out, you can potentially win another title. But that being said, I would say yeah, 3. I would say 3 is like a good formula. I would say.
Yeah, two. I'm with you on 2 or 3 because some situations are different, and like, yeah, I'd agree if Vera won the belt on Saturday that you might as well just chalk up the number 3, right? They're gonna do a third fight, but since Sean O'Malley won, like, he'll be good, and like with him and Aljo, he didn't have to beat Aljo twice. It kind of depends. I think on the scenario and how long, like, of course, Volk had to step in because Sean O'Malley's calling out the chant that Volk wants. He was like, hold up. I'm on Twitter like, hold up, dude. I'm coming back later this year. You are not fighting Ilya before me. Excuse me, sir. And you got to give it to him because Volk is the GOAT of that division. Yes, you give him the next fight. But in any case, I don't want to ramble on too far. Jose and I continue streak after streak. Just saying, the both of us are 8-2 in our last 2 weeks. You can put the money on who we're betting on, and you're going to win. And it's really just as simple as that. So keep staying tuned to us here to continue winning money. Just as a quick rundown, we give our picks here in a 5-weight format where we take 5 fights from any fight on this next card coming up on Saturday and weigh them in order of confidence, with the 5-weight being the most confident pick. We start with the most confident picks here at Moneyline MMA. We're not going to dilly-dally around with our week picks first, and therefore I will announce my 5-weight for this Sunday. The pick that has now started a 4-0 streak in the last month and will continue. Who will that be? It will be one of the biggest favorites on this card, Kennedy and Chuck Wu. He is fighting an old and outdated OSP. I got a lot of respect for Ovince St. Preux. This is nothing against him necessarily. This is really just a matter of, well, I should say that it's not a man. It's not like him as a guy, but it is against him as a fighter. I'm not impressed with a lot of his recent performances. OSP just got knocked out by Felipe Lins, and I don't not like Felipe Lins, but we just watched him fight last Saturday, and he had a good fight against Cutelaba. He unanimously won that fight, but it didn't look like a guy that's like gonna come in here and just knock you out. Like, it was very clear that Cutelaba had the power and the strength in that fight. So for OSP to get knocked out by that in the first round is just very disappointing. Nothing against OSP's prior experience. He's fought for years and years. Top end fighters. He used to be fighting John Jones and guys like that, and now he's kind of just holding up the bottom end of the ranked fighters in this division, and not impressed, man. So give me the 5-weight on Kennedy. He's a huge -500 favorite, so he's gonna have to get parlayed pretty much, but I hate endorsing big parlays at the same time, so I can't necessarily advocate to just blindly throwing him on parlays, but I'm very confident he's going to get the job done. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, Nick, I agree with you for this one. I'm going with Kennedy as well. Zenjuku, because even though he's coming off that first round TKO to Dustin Jacoby, other than that, he was riding a nice three fight win streak, which came over like Ian Cutelaba and Devin Clark, and he finished them both TKO on Ian Cutelaba and a guillotine choke on Devin Clark. And yeah, OSP, he's 40 years old now, and the best thing I can think of is just back in 2016 when he fought John Jones. But since then, he's been just on a roller coaster of wins and losses, and not many too impressive. I think the most impressive win he has since the John Jones fight is Corey Anderson in 2017. So that being said, and I guess Shogun as well, the split, but I mean, that's Shogun, like 2022 Shogun Rua. Dude, really old and a legend. But that being said, like if I don't see Ovince St. Preux choking out Kennedy as well. Ovince St. Preux has that OSP choke now, the Von Flue choke. And he's pretty known to sweep people with that, but I don't think Kennedy's going to be slept by him. And Kennedy, out of his 4 losses, has been KO'd or TKO'd twice, and again, his most recent one to Justin Jacoby. But that being said, I feel really strong about Kenny. I think he's the better fighter in this one, and he's when it comes to on the feet, I think it's gonna be mostly on the feet. Kennedy has strong wrestling defense. His takedown defense is 80%, and he's on the feet. He's gonna be throwing more strikes for sure. He lands 4.86 significant strikes per minute, while OSP lands 2.71. And the thing about OSP too is he historically he just has like uh, gas issues, like in terms of he starts out strong, but as the rounds go on, he just starts to get tired and becomes a punching bag, and that's ultimately like how he usually ends up getting knocked out as well. Is just after just he gets so gassed out, and the next thing you know, they just pick him apart, and that's when he flops. And I think Kennedy's going to get the better end of these punches. He has a 3-inch reach advantage over OSP, and again, he has that 3-inch reach advantage along with throwing more significant strikes per minute. He's going to be tough to take down, and he's slightly taller too, so he's slightly the bigger guy. I think it's going to be a tough night for OSP. So I feel pretty confident with Kennedy Njoku that he's my 4 weight.
Yep, sounds like we kind of have the same points and mostly agree there. That OSP is just really it's more of a bet two against OSP than most other things. It's also been over a year since he's fought, and that's probably good considering he got knocked out by Felipe Lins in the first round. You should give yourself time to recover, but I just don't think it's boding well for him considering he's like 40 years old. And that's just he's old, man. He's been there and done that for so long, and I don't trust. I can't get behind a guy that old in his chin that's shown to be questionable. And I get that Chen Chuck was also coming off a KO, but Dustin Jacoby is actually a beast. I feel like he is, at least. I don't think he's the kind of guy to scoff at, and I think Dustin Jacoby also beats OSP if they fought. So in that case, I'm willing to take Kennedy pretty confidently on this one.
So yeah, there you have it. Both Nick and I have Kennedy Njoku. He's Nick's 5 weight, and he is my 4 weight. And moving forward to my 5 weight, this is the middleweight bout between Gerald Mearshart and Brian Barberina. Right now, Gerald Mearshart, he is the betting favorite at minus 220, while Brian Barberina is the betting underdog at plus 168. For this one, I'm going with Gerald Mearshart, just because he's definitely the bigger guy in this one. Brian Barberina mostly has historically been a welterweight, and uh, this one, I'm not sure why he moved up, but he's not that much shorter than Gerald Mearshart, so I'm really curious to see how big he's really going to look compared to Gerald Mearshart. But looking at the photos, he looks kind of like just like he's going to be a chubby middleweight, something that reminds me of when Johnny Hendricks went up. So this may look similar to like when Johnny Hendricks moved up to fight Paulo Costa. I just don't think Joe Mearshart will be as ripped as Paulo Costa, but I think it's gonna be almost like a similar vibe to that. But the thing about Joe Mearshart is too, I think he has like the most submissions in middleweight history as well. So I think in this one, I feel pretty confident that Joe Mearshart may sneak in a submission over Brian Barberina. Out of his 11 losses, he's been submitted 3 times. But Joe Mearshart, he's got just phenomenal jiu-jitsu, and he's pretty much a lot of his wins, like his last 4 wins, all come via submission. So if he doesn't get it via submission, I definitely see Joe Mearshart just ultimately riding it out to a decision. But man, honestly, I think most likely submission though, just because out of 35 wins, 27 of them come via submission. Only 6 KOs and TKOs, only 2 decisions. So yeah, honestly, maybe he has less decisions is actually the least what he's likely to win by. So honestly, I would think if he doesn't submit Brian Barberina, I think his size and power is definitely gonna help him at least secure a TKO or KO than over Brian Barberina. Brian Barberina is legit, but he is riding a 3-fight losing streak, and it does come to some welterweights like RDA and Gunnar Nelson, and both of them submitted Brian Barberina. So I definitely feel more confident that Joe Mearshart may get a submission win over Brian Barberina as well. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Man, you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. It's funny that we flip flop 5 and 4 weights because Gerald Mearshart is my 4 weight. So I'm also really confident in him getting the job done, and pretty much for some of the reasons you listed as far as the grappling goes, Gerald Mearshart is really not that great of a wrestler, but obviously great at submissions. And that's clearly one of Brian Barberina's biggest weaknesses. He's been submitted multiple times. 2 of his last 3 fights ended by him getting submitted. And yes, Gunnar Nelson and RDA are fantastic jiu-jitsu fighters. But yeah, so is Gerald Meerschaert. And even though he may not land that, like he's like a third in terms of accuracy on landing his takedown attempts, but he still lands 2 per 3-round fight. And I think even 1 here is good enough to get the win against the guy who's as weak on the ground as Brian Barberina has been. It sucks. I'm a fan of Barberina. I love the fact that he just comes forward. And one of my favorites fights in recent memory is him. I think didn't he fight Semmelsberger at some point? Maybe not, but I thought they did. And in either case, I love Semi as well. But that being said, this is mostly a pick against Brian Barberina's inability to defend on the ground, and I just think Gerald Meerschaert gets the job done within the distance. Call it a submission.
Yeah, I think it's just really hard not to side with Gerald on this one. Even he's the taller guy, and he also has a 5-inch reach advantage. Brian Barberina, like you say, he does like to step forward a lot. He throws a high volume of punches. He actually lands 5.53, while Gerald Meerschaert lands 3.3. I get, but Gerald Meerschaert having a 5-inch reach advantage, I definitely think it's going to help him either secure a submission over Brian Barberina, or I think he's definitely going to get just overall the better end of the punches in this matchup. So, yeah, this one, Gerald Meerschaert is my 5-weight, and he is your 4-weight.
Yeah, man, to add one last note to that, I feel like because of Barberina's style, where he just kind of press forward and stuff, take a shot to give a shot, I feel like that's really advantageous for a guy. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it's advantageous for a guy like Meerschaert who isn't the best at takedowns, because it's kind of an easy guy to take down. He's not going to be a great sprawler and stuff like that. I mean, we saw, I forget who it was, but on last Saturday night, someone sprawled so well. It was one of the girls' fights. She sprawled so perfectly that she like landed on her opponent's back of her head, and her opponent face planted pretty much. And it was such a good sprawl. So it was like call the ambulance, but not for me, because she was getting taken down, and she was like, nope, smash your head into the thing. So it really worked out. And I don't think we're going to see Brian Barberina doing anything similar to that. So I think, I'm guessing that Meerschaert gets some relatively not difficult takedowns, and it just kind of looks easy. And we might be seeing the end of Barberina's UFC career, sadly. That'll be 4 in a row.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Yeah, I do think these takedowns will be effortless more on Gerald Meerschaert's end. So, yeah, I definitely feel really confident about Gerald Meerschaert.
So yeah, that being said, though, I'll move on. We've covered both of our 5 and 4 weights. So let's move on to my 3-weight pick, who is going to be Bryan Battle. This is a cool fighter. I would still say a prospect fighter that I had the ability to see fight in person, which is really cool. Bryan Battle is a beast, and he's fighting another beast, to be honest. This is a different, like, I've been taking picks here based on who are they, who their opponent is, but in this case, this is me kind of taking a shot with Bryan Battle and just trusting that he's going to continue improving, as well as he's improved so far in his short UFC career. Short still being 6 fights. He's 5-1 right now in the UFC. Most recently submitted AJ Fletcher, which I respect a lot, and before that KOing Gabe Green in the first round, which I respect a lot too. So in his last couple of fights, he's shown power and ability to submit, fighting Anže Lusa, and who's not been taken down once in the UFC. Sports a 100% takedown defense, and he takes his opponents down over 2 times per 3-round fight. But in this case, I trust Bryan Battle to be more dangerous, even on his back. I think Bryan Battle just poses more of a submission threat no matter what. Bryan Battle in his career, if we want to talk numbers, has 5 submission wins, and Anže Lusa has 1 professionally in their career. So Lusa might be a wrestler, and he might, I'll give it to him. His Dana White Contender Series loss to Jack Della Maddalena. Talk about a loss that aged well. Right, so I'm not hating on Anže Lusa at all. This is not a pick against him. He's looked great, but at the same time, he takes a lot of shots. He's absorbing more damage than he's giving, according to statistics. And in that case, man, I'm really loving what I've seen out of Bryan Battle He's tall, he's lanky, he's going to have a height and reach advantage. And I just expect him to win the striking exchanges, maybe not necessarily with power, but just with a technique and ability. He at least sports a positive striking differential. And like I said, I'm more concerned about him getting a submission than I am Lusa. So for those reasons, I have Brian Battle as my 3-weight. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. I agree with you so much to the point that I actually have Brian Battle as my 3-weight as well. And you said it. They both they both have a shared opponent, is what I'm looking at, is like in AJ Fletcher, and he's been on a win loss kind of run in the UFC, and but both have a win over him. And when I was looking at this fight, I actually did not know who to go for, but I am feeling very confident with Brian Battle. Mostly reason being is because I do think he has slightly more experience with just tougher competition with what he said. But I guess you can argue the same thing with Lusa. Just he has 2 wins, and like you mentioned, that JDM experience is probably the best experience you can get, especially like after this last weekend. And that being said, Brian Battle in general, he has a longer reach advantage, and I think for this one, he may be actually be the one to engage and possibly get a submission win himself over Lusa. Lusa has been submitted. He's never been submitted, but I do think Brian Battle will be able to sink in a submission. More than half of his wins do come via submission, and dude, he's just been in it. Like he's just a tough man, and he's got the power and he's got the submission skills. I think he's overall a better, more well-rounded fighter than Andre Lusa. Lusa himself, half of his is TKO though, and Brian Battle, he's never been KO'd or TKO'd. So, this one's also a really fair one to say it's gonna go to the decision. But overall, man, I agree a lot with you, and I'm going with Brian Battle as my 3-weight.
Hell yeah, man. I think another thing I didn't mention is conditioning. I'd be willing to bet that Brian Battle's conditioning is better. I think he's going to be stronger going into the later end of the 3rd round if it gets that far. Maybe I'm biased, but Andre Lusa's got a lot of strength, right? And typically, those big guys, like your muscles, just need so much oxygen. They die. They end up dying out quicker. I mean, you see it all the time. So I just think Lusa, if he doesn't, he's going to come out strong early. And I think Brian Battle might have to avoid quite a flurry of power coming his way. But once you can loosen down Lusa's conditioning, maybe get a takedown, maybe let him take you down, and know that you're not going to get submitted anyway, he can just tire himself out. And then in the 2nd round, you just knock him out or something. So I think that's the kind of strategy Battle should employ against Lusa. So that was both of our 3 weights. And from there, we can move on to Jose's 2.
Yeah, so we both agreed on our 3-weight, and now on to my 2-weight. And this is the main card opener between Christian Rodriguez and Isaac Dalgerian. Right now, Isaac Dalgerian is the betting favorite at -158, while Christian Rodriguez is the betting underdog at +124. This one, I am going with the favorite on this one. He's a finisher. He reminds me of Manny Torres when he first came in. He's just a guy where he just had so many 1st-round finishes, and it's just so much momentum and power and explosiveness, and not a lot of ring time. And it's just, I think he's gonna bring in that same momentum coming forward. And I know I mentioned a lot of times where you see a lot of guys have a lot of they never really make it past the 1st or 2nd round, so you really find out who they are in the 3rd round. I think for this one, I think it's a solid matchup where Isaac has the opportunity, and he has a realistic chance of winning. And not to take anything away from Christian Rodriguez. Christian Rodriguez, he's on a 3-fight winning streak right now, and he has more UFC experience as well. So I definitely think he has that going for him. And as well, he's the younger fighter. And so when you have the younger fighter, and in this case, he's also the more experienced fighter, that's really extremely dangerous. So I definitely see a lot of value in Christian Rodriguez as being the underdog at +124. So, but that being said, Isaac Dalgerian as well. he not much difference. Like right now the statistics they have is just that he lands 7.29 significant strikes per minute, but that's just a little inflated right now. But that being said, he has some serious power behind his punches. 4 out of his 6 wins, 4 of them come via KO, and he also has submission skills. He does have 2 submission wins on his record. And Christian Rodriguez, he's only lost a decision, never has been submitted or KO. So this one, I don't know. I think Isaac's gonna come in and make a big splash for his second UFC fight. His UFC debut, my apologies, he did get a first round TKO. So to be honest, I'm honestly thinking this may be another first rounder. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
This will be the first one we disagree on, man. And honestly, the more I look into this, the more I'm thinking, wow, I might actually put Christian Rodriguez up higher on my weight list. I got a few reasons, and I think the first is just mainly not trusting a newcomer to the UFC. I understand he knocked out Francis Marshall in the first round, and to be honest, you can look at Isaac Dalgarian's entire fight career, at least according to Tapology, amateur and professional. He has never had a fight outside of the first round. He has finished every single fighter that he has faced, amateur and professional, at some point in the first round. So to me, I'm thinking, if he can't finish Christian Rodriguez in the first round, then what? I mean, it could be more of the same, and he could just continue what he was doing in round 1 and get a finish in round 2. But in my opinion, I think it's more likely that he's fighting the toughest opponent of his career by far, and a guy that's not even old or anything. Christian Rodriguez, I think, is actually younger than Dalgarian, but just has more experience. I really think it's also a little bit of a measure of, like, we've seen it, and I'm not going to let it beat me again, with him having beaten, of course, Rosas Jr. And Cameron Simon most recently. So he's the kind of guy that ends streaks, and he's the kind of guy that shows you, like, hey, this is what the UFC level is going to be necessary if you're even going to be thinking about being a top 15 or top 20 UFC fighter in this division. You're going to need to be at my level. And I'm not saying Dalgarian isn't, but I'm also not willing to bet on it or necessarily put weight on it with our show. In fact, I'm willing to go the other way, because Christian Rodriguez has been there and done that. His last 2 fights, he has essentially dominated, and they went the full 15 rounds. I am very confident in his conditioning and his ability to keep bringing it the whole way through. And last point I'll make is that he's never been finished in his career. So I just doubt that that's going to be Dalgarian. And if Dalgarian can do it, at that point I have to completely flip my opinion on him, and I have to admit that he is a really impressive guy that needs to be looked out for. But until then, I'll be on Christian Rodriguez's side.
And I do want to say, I do see a lot of value in Christian Rodriguez right now as the underdog, just because if you go through the record too of Dalgarian, he has actually fought a lot of tomato cans, but his last win, his UFC fight, his UFC debut did show improvements a lot. So I am gonna stick with it and go with him. But he is my 2-weight. I'm not as confident, that means I'm gonna stick with him. I do think that he is extremely overvalued right now. I think a lot of people are heavily favoriting him, but I definitely there's a lot of value in Christian Rodriguez. So I'll definitely take it up while you can if he's the underdog right now. And honestly, looking back, I do kind of wish I probably would have switched this down to my 1-weight, and I just would have moved my 1-weight up to this. But that being said, this is what I went with, so I'm going to stick forward with Isaac Dalgarian.
Yeah, man, and if there's any consolation, it looks like Dalgarian trains at Factory X, and I'll give them some credit, man. They got some killers. So if anything, he's training with some dogs. To give some names out, Lionheart Anthony Smith, Chris Gutierrez, Dustin Jacoby, title contender Brandon Royval are all fighters that train, or at least have trained at this gym recently. So if that's the kind of competition Dalgarian is facing, I would at least be confident that he has seen or kind of knows the feel of what the UFC level of fighting is, and he's not necessarily just completely oblivious to what he's walking into. But yeah, man, in the end, it's just not. I don't know, man. The only other thing I would say against Christian Rodriguez is the weight class. I believe this is a weight class up from his last three fights. In fact, when he fought Jonathan Pierce, it was at 145, but then he went down to 135 for his last three fights, and this fight is at 145. So you could maybe argue that Christian Rodriguez is a little bit not as good, but I guess it's only one loss against Jonathan Pierce at this weight class, and I think this is a different story against Dalgarian. So, like you said, my pick is staying. In fact, if anything, I'd move up Rodriguez to my 2 weight and put the other fighter we're going to discuss next as my 1 weight. But in any case, they're pretty interchangeable. I was going to make that note that I feel like my 2 weight and 1 weight are pretty interchangeable, and I'll explain that when we get there.
For sure. Yeah, this one's one we'll agree to disagree on. Yeah, we just not feeling as confident about our picks in this one. I don't know how to really say it like that, but like don't really want to say it like that because I can kind of move Isaac too to my 1 weight. But that being said, yeah, I got right now as we speak, Isaac Dalgarian is my 2 weight and Rodriguez is your 1 weight for now.
Yeah, that'll be it. And sometimes we change our picks throughout the week. Of course, we're recording this on Monday, and news comes out and thing comes out like I didn't pick Poirier and you did, Jose, but there was a whole thing about his getting an infection. Before the fight, you could see a spot on his forehead, and even Chael Sonnen posted a video about it on his YouTube channel, and it was like, okay, this looks great for Poirier, and if I could go back on the show, I probably would have put Poirier somewhere on there, but it also would have been hard because I was really confident in who I had anyways. But that little bit of news is like huge, and you learn that on like Friday and stuff. We're not recording it that late, so that's just an example of why sometimes picks and things change. I actually didn't even have anything on Jack Della Maddalena, even though he's my 3 weight in the show. After a while, I'm just like, well, Gilbert Burns is too much of a stud. I'm not betting against it. So just keep in mind, any listeners, that that we're giving our weights, but everything is somewhat subject to change. But we are always going based off of our picks when we give our records. We're always going off of what we gave in the show. That's never just going to be an arbitrary thing that we change and be like, yeah, but on Friday after the show, I changed my mind. Like what we say on the show is the official record. But I don't want to babble on too long because we only have a couple minutes left. Therefore, we have our 1 weights, or at least my 1 weight to discuss. My 2 weight and Jose's 1 weight because we got those flips. So this is the last fight we'll be discussing this afternoon. Of course, we have to discuss the main event of Saturday afternoon. Of course, it wouldn't be a Moneyline MMA show without at least bringing up the main event. This is a heavyweight matchup between Tuivasa, Marcin Tybura, and just giving a quick handicap to get to the point here. I'm picking Marcin Tybura for my 2 weight here. Look, I think this is a little bit of a against Tai Tuivasa pick. I had a lot of respect for him. I love seeing his 5 fight win streak. But at that point, I think that UFC got a little mistaken in that Tai Tuivasa could be like a top end contender, top 5, top 4 heavyweight, and he just kind of got cleaned up by Cyril Gane, cleaned up by the Polar Bear, and choked out by Volkov. In fact, all of those 3 fights, he either got knocked out or knocked down by a pretty significant punch. And to be honest, for those reasons, I'm very skeptical on Tai Tuivasa's chin and his ability to stick around anymore. I think he's gotten his noggin rattled a bit too many times. And look, Marcin Tybura himself is coming off of a loss, but it was against Tom Aspinall, who's widely regarded to pretty much get the next belt shot. That's pretty much done. The said and done. I feel like Tom Aspinall's just been there and done that. So that's not a bad loss at all. And I think Tybura may not need to stand and contend on the feet the whole fight with Tuivasa if he doesn't want to. He's got a little bit of a wrestling acumen in his game. He does land over 1.3 takedowns per 15 minutes. So I do think if he absolutely needs to, he can work that game. I mean, he beat Alexander Romanov, who took him down twice, but he was able to still outlast Alexander Romanov's big boy wrestling and still get the win in that fight. So for those reasons, I have Marcin Tybura, and to be honest, right here live on the show, he's been moving to my 1 weight instead of my 2 weight because I'm actually more confident in C-Rod.
For this one, this one, obviously, this is my 1 weight. This one I really struggled with because I agree with you. I actually had Marcin Tybura. He was my 1st weight, but man, something in me last minute just switched over to Tai Tuivasa. I didn't want to get swayed too much away just because he's on a 3-fight losing streak. And yes, he has been finished in all of them. But then to me, that's kind of what made me kind of like, when I look at this fight, I'm like, I almost feel like a coin flip because like it can go to either guy. And then I started feeling like, well, he is on a 3-fight losing streak. And I do think Tybura, out of all the people he fought, is one of the better chances for him to secure and just get a knockout win himself. Because the thing about Tai Tuivasa, he is reckless. So that's the thing. Tybura, it's my one way, and I will say right here too, like I definitely can see Tybura knocking out Tai Tuivasa, but I also see Tai Tuivasa knocking out Tybura. I just think if Tybura were to knock out Tai Tuivasa, it would be more strategic and technical, while Tai Tuivasa, he's just going to take a lot of damage, and it's just going to come when it comes. Just kind of like against Derek Lewis. It's just going to happen when you least expect it. But this is a guy that, he had many KOs in a row. He had he had 5 KOs in a row between 2020 and 2022. And he was just thrown with the top of the food chain. And Marcin Tybura, he's been up there and seen the top of the food chain already. And that's, Tom Aspinall, current champ, like interim champ, that is, first round TKO. So, nothing saying there. Tom Aspinall, extremely athletic. Obviously the interim champ for a reason. And he had 2 wins before that by decision. So Tybura, he has fought top guys up there too. He has a win over Suri Spivak, even has a win over vet Ben Rothwell and Greg Hardy, Walt Harris. But no one to I can't, the biggest name, I can't even think of a really big top name, because even on Andre Alaska, all these guys are out of their prime. Stefan Struve, the guys he should have beat, but lost to people like Fabricio Verdum, Derek Lewis, Augusto Sakai, Alexander Volkov. This one, I just think that Tai Tuivasa is just going to be reckless and get the better end of the exchanges and just put out put out Tybura just like that. Especially just the age difference as well. Not too much. Tybura is getting up there. He's 38 years old. He has a lot of experience. And he has a 3-inch reach advantage. All these things I do consider good for him, except the age one. But when it comes to landing significant strikes per minute, I would give it to Tai Tuivasa. He lands 3.98 significant strikes per minute, but he does absorb about 5 significant strikes per minute, which is just the scary part. So it's just this one I don't think will go to decision. I think it's gonna end one way or another, just by KO, to be honest. And I'm just at a coin flip going with Tai Tuivasa because of that.
Yeah, that's fair, man. I can't disagree that it is honestly pretty close to a coin flip. Definitely could see Tuivasa using danger and recklessness to his advantage, for sure. I think that's honestly the best path of him getting the win here, is almost just making Tybura back up. Because otherwise, if Tybura is kind of on the aggression, I think Tybura could piece him up, like you said. I don't think Tybura is really going to just have huge power, one swing knockout power. It would be more technical if it was a knockout. So I could definitely see Tuivasa having that quicker path of a kind of a 1-2 punch knockout if he gets a little reckless. So definitely will not have a single dime on this fight. Not a single thing. Maybe the only thing I could even think about betting on this would be within the distance. That would be it. I would not touch anything else. I don't like the fact that it's heavyweights and you just know either guy could knock each other out at any point. They both have enough power to knock out a human being pretty easily. They're 260 pounds, and of course, right? So unless there's John Jones or something like that involved, I'm trying to stay away from betting heavyweights, really. But I will take the 50-50 on Tybura. So, yeah, that about finishes it up then. The tie for a moneyline MMA lock of the week. Might as well parlay Gerald Mearshard, Kennedy, and Jekwu, as they both have 9 confidence points from Jose and I. And we've both been on fire, so it's pretty much a lock that both of those fellas will win on Saturday, unless something changes between now and then where they don't make weight, they get sick, they get hurt, blah, blah, blah. Of course, can't control those things. But thanks, everybody, for listening. We are going to get out of here for the afternoon, but we'll always be back. And next week, the UFC is going to continue to bring us some fight night cards on a weekly basis, I believe, all the way through UFC 300. So we'll continue to return of course, anticipation for UFC 300, but that won't be occurring for another month here later in April. And believe you me, Jose and I will have something special for you then. Thanks for listening and have a good one.